All right, guys, I am here. I've made it over here to the Cooper's Furnace Day Use area, which is up here in Bartow County. And it's another great kind of hidden away little gem of a park. A lot of people don't know about it in the Atlanta area, but it's easy enough to Google and find. And this is the site where Cooper's Furnace was, which I'm going to read to you a little bit about in just a second here. But you can see there's some ruins. Again, got some great ruins of a furnace. It's a nice park area. If you were to go down the road, way down there, the road continues and winds down. It actually opens up to a really cool spot where you can see the up close and personal, the dam, the Allatoona Dam that was built here to get power from the water source from the Etowah River. And the river is actually just on the other side of these trees over here is the river, and it's pretty high right now. And then so the river goes all the way up there to, and it hits the dam, and then you would look all the way up and see this really cool dam, which at the top of the dam, of course, is Lake Allatoona. So also, if you were to come to this area, there's a neat trail that you can take, Cooper Furnace Nature Trail, going that direction, and it goes all the way up to the top of the hill. And I can see it, but I don't know if you guys can. The very top of the hill between the trees up there is, I can actually see another historical marker, but there is a Corps of Engineers office and a small little museum area up there that talks about the history of the Allatoona Dam and Etowah River Valley area and the town of Etowah. And we've got another historical marker here talking about the ironworks. And let's see over here. The furnace itself is really cool. There is a lot of water here, and that is not normal. I've been up here many times throughout my life, and usually it's not flooding like this. So obviously we've had a lot of rain in the area, but there is a creek back there that it's coming from. And then some more historical markers here talking about just the history of this area. Some ruins, which I don't think those are still standing. I've never seen those actual ruins of the ironworks. But yeah, so in relation to the Great Locomotive Chase, this was the community, the area where Captain Fuller would finally take over the first locomotive, jump on another locomotive to chase Andrews and the General. So I'm going to read a little bit, but basically Andrews and the General come, they broke up the track just north of Allatoona, and then they roll past this area, kind of give a sideways glance to the engine, the Yonah, and its conductor, and keep going. And little knowing that if they had stopped to somehow disengage that locomotive, that might have saved some of their lives. But let's look here. Again, I'm looking at Stealing the General, Great Locomotive Chase, and the First Medal of Honor. It is a fantastic book by Russ Bonds, and we do sell it in our gift shop, but you can get it other places as well. So this is a map of the chase, and obviously I'm not hitting all the spots, but you see Big Shanty, Moon Station, Allatoona. So here, find my finger, Etowah, that's the Etowah River. That's kind of where, those original trestles I just showed you, they would have gone over the river right there. And just a little north of it, there's the main line, keeps going this way. You would have to cut over to the right to get to Cooper's Ironworks, where I am now. But the Yonah was kind of sitting over here near the main line. So just to give you an idea of where I am. And get to my spot here. And I'm going to read a little bit. I know you probably don't want to watch me the whole time I read, but I'll switch it up a little bit. Okay, so it says, the siding peeled off to the right of the main line and led to a 5-mile spur running east to the Etowah Manufacturing and Mining Company, known to the locals as Cooper's Ironworks. Let's check this out. Mark Anthony Cooper was a sad-eyed 61-year-old pioneer industrialist and reformed politician who had been struck by the grand scenery and water power of the Etowah district when he came through on a campaign visit years before. Not only was the landscape beautiful, with rushing waters and a thick verdant forest of poplar, hickory, pine, elm, and sweet gum trees, but it also rested upon one of the great iron ore deposits in the United States. Cooper bought an interest in a small furnace in the late 1840s and established the so-called Etowah Railroad, running from the W&A line to his mills in 1858. His business thrived, and by the start of the Civil War, Cooper was renowned as the Iron Man of Georgia, employing approximately 600 people in his ironworks, nail factory, rolling mill, and flour mill, most of them living in the nearby town of Etowah. Having produced iron ore for the rails of the W&A, the Macon and Western, and the Georgia Railroad in pre-war years, as well as for the bars of the state penitentiary, Cooper's furnaces and mills now not only produce several tons per week of pig and bar iron, nails, and railroad implements, but also were under contract to provide arms for the Confederacy. In recent months, the works had been forging steel for fearsome war knives, as well as the heads of the pikes shouldered by recruits back at Big Shanty. Cooper had recently leased from the stables of the Western Atlantic a yard engine to use in running iron, coal, and other materials up and down the tap line from his works, and in switching box cars to and from the main road. Transportation of goods via this railroad spur was a considerable improvement over the old days, when some 20 tons of freight per day had to be hauled by horse-drawn wagons from the mills to the depot. The rented locomotive was old number 10, the Yonah, from the Cherokee word for bear, and it was hard at work that Saturday morning on the siding near the river, a column of smoke billowing up from the stack into the slate-gray sky. Like the General, the Yonah was a Rogers-built 440, a rusty but comparable engine, and though it was one of the oldest engines in service in the state, it had compiled a solid record of reliable runs up and down the W&A before being passed into private service. For the Raiders, this potential rival presented what they would later remember as the first serious cause for anxiety that day. For here was a locomotive already under steam and apparently similar to their own that was not reflected on the W&A's regular schedules and was entirely unknown to Andrews. Yet there it stood, apparently conjured up in the mist, looking as if it were ready to enter upon a race with our general on equal terms. A small group of men milled about the engine, a couple there to man the engine itself, others probably loaders, foundrymen, or mill workers down from the ironworks. This gathering was probably insufficient to give battle, if it should come to that, but the smattering of men certainly seemed capable of running the engine to give chase or raise an alarm. Knight cast a glance at the Yonah, and Knight was one of the raiders, as he rolled the General on past without stopping, and like the others, he was concerned. No matter how old and worn the switch engine looked, the engineer was always one to speak his mind, and today would be no different. Jerking his head at the locomotive hissing on the siding next to them, he said to Andrews, "We had better destroy that engine and that bridge with it." No one knows what Andrews was thinking at that moment. Perhaps he was still flushed with the excitement of the morning's earlier triumphs, or maybe he envisioned further damage to the track ahead that would render any locomotive pursuit impossible. Or maybe he simply believed that he had told the Ohio Volunteers that the greatest challenge of the day would be to reach and take the engine. After that, success was certain. It would have been, Pittenger would later assert, but for unforeseen contingencies. When it came down to it, the bearded spy was much more concerned with obstacles up the road than he was with being run down from behind. Stealth and stifled communications had worked well to this point, and he planned to keep up appearances for as long as possible. Having avoided any argument, alarm, or clash of arms thus far, Andrews saw no reason to reveal his intentions for the sole purpose of disabling a locomotive that would soon be left up behind in any event. Whatever his reasoning, he chose to avoid confrontation and to continue on their way. Andrews looked back at the Yonah, turned to his engineer, and shook his head. "It won't make any difference," he said, "but we found out before Knight recalled years later, that it made all the difference in the world." So indeed it did, and they rolled on by. And then, of course, along comes Captain Fuller and his men, who at this point were still on that pushcart. And, of course, just north of Allatoona, they ran off the rail bed because Andrews had pulled up one of the rails. But then they were able to pull it back on, set it back on the tracks and keep going and go just a little further away until they then themselves ran across the Yonah sitting on the side over here by Cooper's furnace. And he then told that engineer what was going on, that the train had been stolen, blah, blah, blah. And he was able to then get off the pushcart and get on the Yonah and then start chasing the general by locomotive, which was, again, a step up from running, pushcart, train. Next stop, I believe, might be Cartersville. We'll see. We'll find out. See you soon. Bye.